Hi. Hello.
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 Hello and welcome to Architecting.
So you spent some time with Mike in Chicago?
He's in Springfield, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you were there for a little bit? Or I feel like you just float everywhere. You just kind of...
He is part of the AIA ecosystem. So, California was really good. So Mike's counterpart in California, Paul Welsh, loved advocating for emerging professionals. So he really pushed me out into being a part of the region, being a part of national, and introducing me to a lot of people that way. So that's how I reached that, Mike.
Guys, and stepping back a little bit, so you went to undergrad at Drury, is that right? Yeah.
Undergrad in Drury.
So are you from Missouri?
No.
Oh, really?
I grew up not too far from here. I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Drury was one of the few places that let me play soccer while doing architecture. So, yeah.
I was wondering, I grew up in Kansas, and so it was like Missouri didn't have a accredited state architecture school, and so architects could come to Kansas, and then if you wanted to be a dentist, you would go to Missouri from Kansas.
Yeah, you never looked at Drury?
No, I mean, it's small. I mean, I know good architects from there, but it always seems like, it's people from Missouri or it's people from sort of that area. But the soccer makes sense. So did you know what you were getting into with architecture? Were you pretty gung-ho with architecture?
Pretty clear when I talked to a lot of soccer coaches, and they're like, oh, what do you want to major in? And as soon as you say architecture, they're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to support that. And I was like, what is going on?
Maybe try that later. Yeah.
Why can't we do both?
Why?
Yeah.
It looks so fun, yeah. Growing up, did you have a sense of what architecture was? I feel like it's not a common thing to almost understand, right?
No, I think so. My first love of architecture, I always tell the story when I was in fourth grade, and your teacher tells you to draw your green home. And I feel like most fourth graders tend to draw in elevation, but I drew in plan.
I did a full 1 point. It was perfect, and
yeah, no. But I had the indoor soccer field.
Nice, yeah.
And obviously, and I was having a lot of sleepovers at the time, and I'll date myself. The original Nintendo was out, so I would always draw TVs with the controllers.
Nice, perfect.
Yeah. So.
Now.
And then it just kind of I still didn't really know what it was, right? But I found these stock plan magazines when I would go grocery shopping at the local Safeway.
Yeah.
And then. New Mexico itself has a different type of architecture than most places, right. So that kind of stood out to me. And then finally in high school, Stephen Hall finished he designed a new community library.
Oh.
And that was a pretty architectural move for our community, and it was one of my most favorite spaces.
Yeah, interesting. Because I feel like, my dad was a contractor.
No, wait, sorry, I should go back. It wasn't Stephen Hall, it was Antoine Friedock.
Okay, I was wondering about that. Yeah, which space?
Makes sense, because he's...
I was going to say, how much does Friedock...
Friedock.
Okay.
Yeah, Friedock.
Yeah.
So...
And that's what I was going to say of, I grew up in the middle of Kansas. My dad was a small general contractor, and I went to architecture school thinking I'd be a little bit better contractor if I knew architecture. And within, the first 2 weeks, it was oh, there's a lot more to this, right?
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I necessarily experienced, amazing architecture yet, and with pre-doc and with some of the other architects down there, it's an interesting environment, it seems like, to kind of culture that in you.
Well, plus, Santa Fe has this very stringent historical code when it comes to even look and feel of their buildings. So even the target there is Adobe, right, style. So
yeah. And so did you make it all the way through college playing soccer and architecture? Yeah.
I did it I did it for 2 seasons, and then it was just clear. Well, and Drury, as we said, is a really small school. So I had 25 people in my graduating class. Really? So you're literally choosing between studio and practice every single day, or studio and
It's funny you say studio and practice, yeah. So, different kind of practice.
Yeah, different type of practice, architectural practice, and soccer practice. But so I was literally, my studio professors weren't going to be happy if I was missing studio. And of course, NICE, it's soccer team, is a team sport.
Right.
So there were a lot of successful like swimmers. So as more of an independent sport, it's a little bit easier.
Interesting. Yeah. But you can just zone out and think about your project as you're swimming.
But also you don't have to necessarily practice with the team.
Oh, right. So you could sleep much less and do sleep less.
Yeah.
Was that a hard decision at the time of like soccer versus architecture? By then you were so.
I mean, I think it wasn't that I was overly passionate about architecture. I think it was just the reality that I knew I wasn't good enough to play soccer the rest of my life.
Oh, right.
And even if I was good enough to play soccer the rest of my life, I mean, if you look at all the things that the women's soccer team has had to endure through time, like it's really hard to make a living.
Right.
And get soccer in the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's so easy to make a living in architecture. So easy.
Which is why I love architecture.
But so the next step, you went to SciArc after that, or?
I did. I had it in my mind. I had some really great connections with professors at Drury, and I had it in my mind that I always wanted to teach. So that was one of the reasons why I pursued an MArch. But I also, Drury was a more technical school, and I had some teachers that were into more theory, and I was really interested in that even further. And then I was also interested in just the new computer programs that were coming out relative to the architecture practice. And Drury, for some weird reason, made us do Reform Z. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Weird. Yeah.
So I was like, there's got to be other things. So I went to SciArc, and then I learned Maya and Rhino, and and it's a lot of theory.
Right.
SciArc.
Yeah. And did you I feel like it can affect you so much, right, of which school you choose and which path it goes on. And was that a fairly obvious choice for you of like that SciArc, or did you look at a lot of different places?
I looked at a lot of different places. I was mostly focused on places doing really interesting things with computers. So I looked at Carnegie Mellon and Columbia too. And then I didn't actually think I could get into SciArc, so until one of my professors recommended it to me. And then I had a visit. I met Michael Speaks at the time. He is the dean of Syracuse now.
Yeah.
But he was running the post-professional master's program there. And he was the only, when I went and visited the campus, he was the only dean, and he sat down, he said, I didn't even get an admittance letter. He's like, I'm letting you know you're in the program. Come here. It's California.
You're like, so, yes, but can I get a letter? Can we get something in writing? Yeah, it's funny. Did you actually get a diploma? Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
And SciArc has very uniquely designed diplomas.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's interesting because we just had Anne Mooney in here, and she's a SciArc grad too. And so that sort of checked all those kind of boxes that you felt were missing from undergrad, and
it did. It did. We had this crazy studio, strategic scenario planning studio, that was run by Michael Speaks. But at the time, the Los Angeles was looking at, or the Los Angeles Valley, was looking at seceding from Los Angeles as a city.
Oh, really?
So we looked at various different city systems. My team got parks, and we looked at what would happen to the valley if it could no longer rely on the Los Angeles park system.
Interesting.
Anyways, it was a lot of mapping of the city and understanding where parks are and how they were being utilized by the community. And I wish I kind of paid attention to how much I loved that studio, because I think I would have took me a while to find my way back there. But ultimately, when I went into consulting and did strategy work later after getting my MBA, my MPA, and I went back to design and working in a design studio, that was the type of work that I was doing.
Yeah. So what did that look like? You come out of SciArc, you have all these big ideas and things, and then you get hit with the real world. What did that look like for you?
Hit by a real world working for a firm that was doing Home Depot sided apps.
Nice.
So I can I know.
Was that
the joke is
09 or something with it
Cheapo Depot
in the different?
No, I was a little older.
Downturn.
So that was so I graduated in 2006, 3 from.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was a bit of a dip. Schools. I don't know any good schools, at least that having been to business school, I don't know any good architecture school that has really quality job placement. At career centers.
Yeah.
Right. So I was just kind of hitting the job boards, finding the first thing I could. It was interesting. WD Partners was an interesting firm to me because they were doing nuts and bolts all the way down to helping some fast food companies redesign their packaging. And I was like, that's pretty cool that you're doing architecture and then even process operations and food delivery.
Yeah.
But then I just got stuck. The only thing that the Orange County office was doing at the time was Home Depot's. So I got stuck there for a year.
You need a lot of advanced modeling for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So learn things like you can only break ground so many times or so many months of the year in Alaska.
So it was all over. Yeah. These were everywhere. Yeah.
So, and then, and I know I can tell you exactly if the plan is mirrored or not by what side the lumberyard is on.
Nice.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
So things like that. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I adult life.
Every time you walk into a Home Depot, you don't exactly.
Pound. Yeah.
And so, how long did you last there?
A year.
A year.
Yeah.
And then, did you know? Well, like.
No.
Like nice.
So I was I through Paul Welsh. He helped me find a job at a local firm. They did K through 12 modernizations. I thought, it's amazing. You're going to be building environments for
these youth,
for the next generations.
Sculpted learning environments. Yeah.
Yeah, but California has this program, the Department of the State Architect, that all K through 12 and most community colleges are run through, and they have a lowest bid system, right? So you get set up with all of. So one, it felt like there was this extra layer of building department, but then which was fun to deal with. But then lowest bid for these environments means that you're ending up with a lot of contractors. That there were some great contractors to work with, but there were definitely contractors who set up separate trailers on our job site looking for mistakes in our drawings because they needed a change order away to profit. And then, we would upgrade these schools. We'd give them internet. We'd give them air conditioning. And the teachers would be complaining to me that they can't plug in their coffee maker at the same place that they used to plug into. And I was like, where's the joy that I'm supposed to be getting out of these new environments? So that's when I was realizing that I was like, well, maybe an architecture firm isn't the right thing for me. And I went up to San Francisco, to the Bay Area for the first time, and I worked for public architecture, which has since gone away. But I went and I managed a program there that they were calling the 1%, and it eventually became the 1+ program.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it
Yeah.
now? So the economy was good. Architects had so much work, and we were asking architects to give 1% of their billable time towards the public pro bono,
Right.
in the hope of creating the world's largest pro bono studio. They were actually having problems finding projects to work on.
Interesting.
And I think it goes back to how few people know what architects actually do.
Right.
So a nonprofit is just like, I can't afford a ground up new building. Why would I need to partner with an architect on everything? So I came in there to begin to match them with pro bono projects and really educate non-architects on other areas that architects can be helpful.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that seemed like things really aligned to that, right?
Yeah.
But then
It's only ever been to be a 1-year day.
yeah.
My friend John Kerry was doing a year at the American Academy of Rome. He was going to come back, and I was like, well, maybe I'll go to business school. So
Was that sort of stimulated from the 1% kind of stuff, or just from your whole kind of career?
It was stimulated from the 1% stuff because I was like, we have no idea as architects how to talk to anyone but ourselves, having all of these conversations outside of architecture. And so it was kind of stimulated. One, I was like, it would be helpful to begin to build the business case around what it means to be an architect. But it was also like I hit this was hitting my head, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do next.
Right.
I appreciated this in being a nonprofit organization, but I don't know what I want to do next. And I felt like I've been on this path since 4th grade. Maybe I should see if there's anything else out there.
Yeah.
So I went to business school. I took a break from anything I was volunteering in. I dropped everything related to AIA. I stayed away from real estate clubs. I stayed away from rebuilding clubs. I immersed myself in marketing and entertainment and consulting.
A real detox.
Yeah. But ultimately what I found was I missed the people in the profession, and I missed kind of the hope they bring to what the changes that they want to see in their community.
Right.
So then I needed to figure out a way to be a part of that architectural world, but I still wasn't convinced I wanted to live and work on the firm side.
Right. Talk a little bit about just that experience of going to business school. Like I think about that sometimes, and I'm like, oh, that's but like, what's the experience of like that, especially kind of compared or contrasted with the architecture studio experience?
Yeah. So I really stopped so I was in my mid-20s. I was unattached. I applied everywhere. I ended up at UCLA. I ended up transitioning the year after to the Presidio Graduate School. But being full-time immersed in an MBA program is pretty intensive. But you have these cohorts. You kind of live, breathe, study, go out on the weekends, spend all of these time with these people. And it's a bit like undergrad on steroids, because people have gone off into the world and they have money and they're all like legal drinking age.
Yeah.
Now, I definitely I knew more of the night scene while I was in LA when I was in business school than I ever did.
Yeah.
Pre or post.
Yeah.
Because we just hung out together.
Right.
But it was so interesting understanding all of these different perspectives, people from so many different backgrounds and career paths and industries kind of coming together. And a lot of it, business school had evolved to a lot of team built problem solving too. So a lot of the work we did was in teams.
Right. And it's sort of like project based, right? Of like coming up with a business model and like creating a business in kind of the same way as a studio, right? But they make money instead of losing money, maybe. And so when you got out of there, did you have a clear sort of direction of what?
No. So that was we were just coming out of the recession. So that was like 2011, 2012. I was applying everywhere. You have this, you're told in undergrad, like you can do anything with an architect's degree. The problem is people don't understand architects' degree.
Yeah.
So I had a hard time, like trying to keep the architecture part of me with the MBA, and people trying to like understand what that meant. They couldn't see how my skills translated from one job to another. I was applying in various different sectors. I was really interested in something more community-based. And what ultimately made me get the job is I did a lot of writing and I did a lot of posting on LinkedIn, and I started having a lot of coffee chats with people that work within the architecture industry or had been an architect and they left the industry. And I had a lunch, it was a lunch with Marjane Pearson. And she's like, I just interviewed for one of my articles, this firm called MK Think. They have this strategy group that looks at like what services can you deliver pre and post traditional practice. And I think you would really love it there. So that's why I ended up the next 5 years.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, how did that... Was Slack the next move from there, or
from there I went into commercial, corporate, the consulting side of brokerage, which I don't recommend to anyone, honestly.
I love looking at your LinkedIn profile where you just say like load more jobs. It just keeps going.
Yeah,
I like it.
I went into so some of the work that I was doing at MK Think was like workplace strategy.
Okay, yeah.
So I went into corporate on the consulting side of commercial beverage, and that life is crazy in there. I felt like I was selling my services more than I was doing the work, because I had to sell to the brokers because they were the gatekeepers of the relationships, and then you have to create a contract with the brokers, and then you have to go sell to their clients, and then you have to create this contract with the client, remembering the other way, the fee split with the broker. So I felt like I spent 75% selling, which was a good experience, and 25% like doing the actual work.
Right.
And then with any consulting work, in order to successfully scale consulting work, professional service work, you're ultimately doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, you could say that about architecture. Architecture is a little bit more nuanced because you're delivering a prototype essentially every time you.
Every time, yeah, right.
But like every time I did corporate, like a workplace strategy job, it was the same thing over and over again. And I was like, I would love to actually see this through to implementation or have a different set of projects. So then I started looking at tech, and I was like, where could I land in-house where I can actually see movement and see change over time?
Yeah.
Instead of like doing a 6-month strategy engagement.
Right. And so did Slack work for that for a little bit?
No, Slack did. Slack was amazing. I mean, not only are they there's there's tech leaders out there that people probably aren't the biggest fans of, that don't have the best culture. I was at Slack for another 5 years, but it was the best. It was, I think, far way and above the best company I could have been in during the pandemic. The leadership were so human. Like, I've never had better leaders than when I was at Slack. And then it got acquired by Salesforce, but those people, I still got to work under those Slack leaders, and that was amazing because I learned a lot. I would say I learned a lot more about leadership and professional development and what it means to truly care about employees and engaging your employees.
Yeah.
At Slack.
But then the architect bug kind of crept back in, or how?
No, I mean, so ultimately, I was doing a lot of work. I was looking at like what do future environments look like in the workplace. I was partnering a lot with Future Forum at Slack, and Future Forum is doing all this amazing research about how we need to change the way we work post-pandemic, and now that we're all more flexible. And in December, Fortune magazine put up a article where they literally compared Future Forum's research findings, with Mark Benioff's return to office strategy. And it was clear that like the work that we were doing in this little incubator and Slack would never roll up to the corporate level at Salesforce. So I left when the last of Slack leadership at the C level left. I decided to head off on my own. We got a severance package for it. It set me up. And in the background, all of these things, when I started business school, I started practice of architecture.
Okay, yeah.
Which was originally just a curation of all these articles I was reading in business school that I felt it would be handy for architects to be aware of. And I was like, well, let me go all in on practice of architecture. And Janine and I had started the podcast, Practice Disrupted, during the pandemic. So there were pieces in play to begin to make something out of that.
And that was when you were still at Slack,
Yeah, so I've always had, like, I encourage side hustles. I know a lot of principals are like, side hustles, but also I think it doesn't have to be like doing architectural projects on the side.
Right.
Like I've always written and made money writing on the side.
Nice, yeah.
So yeah.
I'm friends with Janine and saw you guys speak at the first Entree Architect event in Austin. And I, like a year ago, I was having a real crisis of like, what do I want to do, and what do I, and reached out to Janine and was like, hey, let's grab a digital coffee. I like what you guys are doing. Like, let's talk more, right? Because, and I think you and her are inspiring in that way of how how you can circle around architecture, right? And do different things, and how you're supporting architects in these huge blind spots that we have, right? So maybe talk a little bit about sort of how practice of architecture has evolved now and sort of like what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think to talk about that, you kind of have to talk about this notion of portfolio careers. And it's really hard. And I feel like tech talks about it more. People in tech or people outside of architecture talk about it. But it's this idea that it's really hard to, as a person, an individual with multiple passions, to fill all those passions in one job.
Yeah.
Right? So I think practice of architecture similarly is amalgamation of different things. So because I was in Slack, I have my foot in the tech world and I wanted to maintain that. So I'm an advisor to a number of different startups that have an AEC connection, because there's a ton of VC and private equity money going into the AEC space right now. So I do a little bit of that. I am an outside board member to architecture firms. I serve as an outside board member to Shepley Bulfinch. I run my own little community. We're small and mighty and growing, but it was really, I felt like we had all these people tuning into the podcast and we needed to give them a home to connect with one another.
Right.
And Janine and I were realizing we're not alone in all of the dialogue we're having, and there's other people that are actually in practice that are hearing what we're saying.
Yeah.
So I have a little community. For that community, I create resources. I upsell those. If you're outside of the community, you pay a little bit for those resources. If you're inside of the community,
right,
you get the resources for free. I brought on a partner, a CIO, Larry Fabroni, and we're really interested. He's finishing his MBA at Booth in Chicago, and he's really been working with a lot of professors that have built venture funds or have been a part of accelerators. And we're now seeking out conversations with universities who are interested in building on a certificate program around entrepreneurship and architecture. And the idea is to get architects in there to create new products and services that can expand their business and also sustain them when their clients are building, and then drop them into our accelerator, kind of cherry pick the best of whoever comes out of that curriculum with the university partners, and drop them into the accelerator and see if we can take them more in.
Yeah.
So it's an amalgamation of everything, like the consulting, the advising, the business school, the pushing architecture in new directions.
Yeah. So do you feel like this is finally the culmination of all that background, and this scratches every itch sort of thing, or
it's pretty covered,
right?
And then a part of it is just getting out and speaking, getting to come to conferences and talking about that passion and how the business of architecture needs to change. But
yeah. What's that piece of advice that you have for people? Would you call it portfolio?
A portfolio career.
Portfolio career. So that's sort of having a career where it's varied. Is that the idea behind
it?
I
mean, there's kind of different definitions. I think it's really this. Just one, it's a mindset that a career isn't linear.
Yeah.
Which is really hard, I feel like, in architecture, because architecture is life to so many people, and it is an identity, especially if you went through extra years of school and the IDP or the AXP, and you took tests just so you could sit among your peers and call yourself an architect. Right. So the path after you graduate is always kind of become an architect, lead an architecture firm. It's a very linear, one direction path. But it's just I like to read, I like to write, I like to speak, I like to engage with people. How do I do all of those things? And it's really hard to find that one job.
Right.
Does all those.
When I think, just like you said, I didn't think I could get into SciArc, right? I hear students saying that. I'm like, how do you know to apply, right? You don't know, and try these things, right? And in the same sense of, well, I need to get a job out of school, and I need to get my license, and I need to, it's like, do you? Is that the thing that works, right? And to do what you're doing, and where it's not this defined thing, right? Is hard to figure out. And that idea of, yeah, you have an architecture degree, you can do anything, right? You talked about when you actually try to put that into practice, it can be difficult. But do you have that advice to people looking to have that more varied experience of how they, keep pursuing that? Or
One of the best, I can't claim favorites, but one of, I have a good friend, Laura Weiss, who we've done a workshop with her. She was on the first season of Practice Disrupted, but she has had many different careers. She's older than me generationally, and she always gives advice. And this is true of, there's a book out there called Design Your Life. And essentially they say to prototype your way to what's next. Right. So if you're interested in business school, go and take some night and evening classes or electives in the business school and see if that's something that you actually want to invest more time and money into.
Yeah.
If you're interested in, I don't know, I was at another conference and one guy's I always wanted to see if I could make it as a chef. I feel like little pop-up restaurants are so ubiquitous now. Do a pop-up and out of your house, see how that works. And is that something that you want to do on a daily basis, that you want it to become your primary source of income? I just interviewed on the podcast X over Zero. It's a jewelry company that was started by an architect. They just had one of their pieces featured on a Netflix movie. But anyways, there's an architecture firm literally in LA. They are professors at SCIARC too, but they have a jewelry line that they are very open that the jewelry line actually sustains their architectural practice. They are able to do more research because of the money that
it's Dwayne
Dwayne is the individuals out of the X over Zero. Dwayne,
they are
his partner in Catherine.
Okay.
But it was there's another jewelry maker in LA that has the jewelry line is called Lace. Oh, it's Oliver Wu. It's genuine.
Yeah,
Kerner Oliver.
Yeah.
So they both are teachers, maybe at SCIARC and USC now, but Lace is this growing jewelry line. It's all 3D printed jewelry, and you could tell it's very architectural design.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for coming to the conference. We're looking forward to. I'm at a little disadvantage because I didn't get to hear your talk before this, so I'm looking forward to it tomorrow and see what you had to say. And thanks for pushing forward and leading the profession. So thanks for coming on.
You can visit architecting.com, that's architect-ing.com, to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.
This podcast